Let me just start off this video by stating what this video is mainly about. There is a huge lack of understanding of type 1 diabetes in America and around the world, and I'm here to talk about that today. If you're new, hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Olivia, and I've been a type 1 diabetic for over 20 years, and I've spent a lot of my life working on ways to make diabetes more sustainable and more enjoyable, because living with diabetes is not always peaches and cream, but I have found some ways to make my life better living with this disorder, and I want to help you guys do the same. So welcome or welcome back if you're new. So in the beginning, you heard me talk about how I felt about the understanding of type 1 diabetes is not very great in America. That's where I live, or even around the world. And a lot of that stems from the difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Now, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, and I'm not going to go into the mechanics of the real differences behind type 1 and type 2, but what I will say is type 1 is technically something you have no control over. You just get it. A lot of times you get it when you're a young child, and then you just grow up with it and you live with it, just like me and a lot of you out there. Whereas type 2 diabetes, you are not necessarily born with it. It can be hereditary, but diet and lifestyle have a big influence on type 2 diabetes. Now, let me start by saying that I think one of the biggest problems out there for people is that people group type 1 and type 2 diabetes together. And I think that is what causes a lot of my frustration in the world today, because people assume they're the same thing. And even when I was in elementary school, I remember I was the only diabetic in my grade. And when they started teaching diabetes in health class, they said diabetes is something that you get when you don't take care of yourself, when you eat poorly, and when you gain a lot of weight. So everyone looks at me. They know I'm diabetic, and they're thinking, Olivia, why don't you just do better? Why don't you eat healthier or be better? And I went home crying to my mom that day, who was also diabetic. I went home crying because I said, Mom, the teacher in school today said that you are diabetic because you don't take good care of yourself. And it really hurt my feelings. And needless to say, my mom called the school and had words with them. But that was teaching young children who now are adults. But regardless, if that was just in one classroom in America, imagine what's going on everywhere else. A lot of people are taught that type 1 and type 2 are kind of similar and the same thing because no one wants to take the time to explain the real difference. And I think that is one of the most frustrating things about living with diabetes. Or even today as an adult, a lot of people just assume that diabetes is because you don't take care of yourself. That is one of my biggest pet peeves in the world today. I know that people will see my insulin pump on me and they'll ask me questions about it. I get a lot of questions about my insulin pump and my Dexcom, and people would just say, oh, well, wouldn't it just be easier to take better care of yourself? And you can see, like, I'm not a big person. But still, people will still make comments like that to me. And then I have to explain to a complete stranger that that's not what type 1 diabetes is about. I just think it's a real shame that there's not enough knowledge in the world and enough people out there teaching the real difference between type 1 and type 2. And I'm not here to pick on the people who are living with type 2 diabetes. I'm not here to pick on them. I'm just here to state the fact that there's a difference between type 1 and type 2. That itself, I think, is what stems most of my frustrations about living with diabetes, because the world just doesn't understand the difference. Now, another frustration of living with diabetes is that people will automatically assume and tell you what you can and can't eat or drink. I am just like every other human in the world, just as, diabetics are just like normal people. No one likes being told what to do. So when you're telling a type 1 diabetic, you really shouldn't be eating that, it just makes you want to say, like, who are you to tell me what to do? I'm an adult just like you are. You can't tell me what to do. And I think that is another huge red flag And it's really hard living with diabetes when you have people constantly feeling like they know your health better than you do. And I've had that happen multiple times. I've had family members tell me, you really shouldn't be eating that. You really shouldn't be doing this or that. But sometimes diabetics' sugars get low. And to be honest, I know it's an unpopular opinion, but you can have regular sweets. You just have to take the insulin for it. I know that it's not necessarily the most recommended thing to do, but I think that the world needs to remember that diabetics are adults too, because no one wants to be told what they can and can't do all the time. And it just really stinks for people living with diabetes, because a lot of people like to point fingers and tell us what we can and can't do. That kind of brings me to a story about my childhood growing up. So as I mentioned, me and my mom both were type 1 diabetic. And I remember when we would all go out to eat as a family, me, my brother, my mom and dad, my dad would always tell our waiter or waitress, just so you know, my wife and my daughter are diabetic. And especially when dessert was offered, when the waiter would come over and say, oh, would anyone like dessert today? My dad would say, no, my wife and my daughter, they're diabetic. If you bring sugar out, then they're going to go all crazy. They're going to eat it all. Then they're going to go into a diabetic coma and blah, 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 blah. And it was every time we went out to eat, where it made it almost embarrassing to go out, because I felt like our health was being put out there. And I know that I can't be the only one who grew up with a parent like that, or maybe a sibling like that, but I think that's what stems a lot of my feelings of diabetics being told what to do or being looked at differently, and I don't think that's fair or that's right. And this video today is kind of random. It's kind of me coming on here and just rambling off a bunch of things that annoy me with the world today, but I'm looking at this video more so as I want to empower diabetics out there to be confident in themselves and to feel good about themselves. And I know that we live in a world today where people just love to bring you down. And I don't want myself to be a part of that, and I don't want you guys to be a part of that too. Especially living in a world now that the Ozempic shot exists. And for those who don't know, the type 2 medication is being used to take by regular people to lose weight. So I know we're living in a world today where things are kind of hairy. Things are very hairy. I would be lying if I said that I think it's kind of off-putting that some type 2 diabetics had to go without medication because non-diabetics needed to take Ozempic. I'm not here to slander Ozempic. I understand some people need to lose weight and all of that, but it's tough being a diabetic out there, whether you're type 1 or type 2. It's tough. You can be scrutinized. But I wanted to come on here today and just leave a short little video kind of empowering everyone out there, all the diabetics out there, whether you're type 1 or type 2. We're all living in the same world together, and I think it's just best to try to communicate to the world what diabetes is and how we can all move forward. Please leave in the comments below some of the things that you've noticed in the world today that annoy you about the viewpoints on diabetics, because I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say as well. So be sure to give this video a big thumbs up, and I thank you if you made it to the end. I'm sorry you guys just listened to me go on and ramble about what in the world bothers me, but I want to come on here and just have a little chit chat, because today when I was out and about, I was at the gym, someone had said, wow, you're real skinny for being a type 1 diabetic or a diabetic. And I just stared at them blankly, because people just don't know there's a difference. People don't know that there's 2 different types of diabetes. And it's just, although I would never walk up to a stranger and have the nerve to say anything like that, people do it all the time, so I know I'm not alone. So that's why I came here onto YouTube to share that little story. So thank you for checking me out today. Once again, subscribe if you're new. Give this video a big thumbs up, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.